ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Everyone should strictly follow the regulations of 16 rounds daily. If one is busy for other Krishna consciousness activities and cannot fulfill the regular routine of chanting, he must compensate in the next day, curtailing his activities in the matter of sleeping or eating or any other sense gratificatory process. Letter from 11/10/69. The 16 rounds is just a minimum I set for my disciples, so they will chant at least that much. Actually, chanting should always be going on. Letter from 25/6/74. On another occasion, Srila Prabhupada said, this chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 22.113 purport. Among all the regulative principles given by the spiritual master, his order to chant at least 16 rounds is the most important one. Once in London, a devotee only managed to chant 15 rounds by the late evening and then went to sleep because he was very tired. During the night, he heard the bell ringing. He went downstairs, opened the door, and there was Srila Prabhupada standing before him. Have you chanted your 16 rounds? Srila Prabhupada asked. Before the devotee could answer, he woke up realizing that Srila Prabhupada had appeared in a dream. Immediately he sat up in his bed and chanted the last round, chanting loudly enough to hear oneself. When Haridas Thakur became very sick due to old age, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu addressed him as follows. Now that you have become old, you may reduce the number of rounds you chant daily. You are already liberated, and therefore you need not follow the regulative principles very strictly. Chaitanya Charitamrita Antelila 11.24. In the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, the first regulative principle is that one must chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra loudly enough so that he can hear himself, and one must vow to chant a fixed number of rounds. Chanting should be accompanied by regulative principles. For a few months, the sons of Prajapati Daksha drank only water and ate only air. Thus, undergoing great austerities, they recited this mantra. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always situated in his transcendental abode. Since he is the Supreme Person, Paramahamsa, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto him. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.5.27 to 28. These verses may provide the impression that the chanting of the Mahamantra or other Vedic mantras has to be accompanied by severe austerities. However, in Kali Yuga, it is impossible to perform the above mentioned types of austerities. People cannot subsist merely on drinking water and eating air for many months. Such a process cannot be imitated, but at least one has to follow a certain form of renunciation in order to chant successfully. At least the four regulative principles of Krishna consciousness should be followed. No illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, and no gambling. Everyone can practice this tapasya, austerity, quite easily. Then the chanting of Hare Krishna will become successful without delay. Why these restrictions, which exist since ancient times? As we will see, there is a very interesting correlation between following these four principles and the four principles of dharma or religion. These four principles are self evident If we can rest our lives upon them, they will elevate us innumerously. If we violate them, there will be degrading reactions. Daya, compassion, is destroyed by killing or meat eating. Tapaha, restraint, and austerity are destroyed by intoxication. Satyam, truthfulness, is destroyed by lying and gambling. And Saucham, cleanliness, both external and internal, is destroyed by illicit sexual relationship. Most probably, not many readers will find it difficult to abide by the first three of the regulated principles, but even experienced devotees report that the sexual drive, either grossly or subtly um, in the mind, pushes vehemently for activity. At the same time, everyone knows that there is no lasting fulfillment possible. This push can be compared with an itching sensation which demands scratching. Although there is temporary relief, the itching sensation will soon return with redoubled strength until blood will flow. What to do? The scriptures very clearly state that the conditioned soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, but if there is no higher test, it will remain addicted to those pleasures. If, however, one experiences a higher test, he or she can easily forsake the lower test. Referred to Bhagavad Gita 2.59. All material pleasures, including the sex pleasure, do not supply what the soul looks for. Material pleasures have a beginning and an end and are ultimately sources of misery. However, this can only be clearly understood by someone who has tasted the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness, the holy name, when chanted seriously and without offenses, can quickly bring us to that ecstasy. One feels like Yamunacharya, who described his meditation on Krishna. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him. Whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.5.72. We'll stop here. So, what we understood from today's reading is about the importance of chanting and that too the prescribed numbers of chanting. Srila Prabhupada, by seeing the situation in Kali Yuga and seeing the eligibility and capability of people in Kali Yuga, has given the prescribed number of rounds to chant Harinam Mahamantra, that is 16 rounds. And it is mentioned that how it is so important to chant the prescribed number of rounds like every day without any compromise, when during for initiated devotees, like when we take the vow in front of Guru and Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, that we have to will chant minimum 16 rounds, that Prabhupada has prescribed for initiated devotees, that minimum 16 rounds means we can go for more. And we should also, it is mentioned in the scriptures that we should not never get satisfied by, once we, for nama, we should never get satisfaction that, okay, I am done for today. We should do more and more. Like we should not think like, okay, I'm done with 16 rounds, then I'm done for today. We can go for more than, but that's the minimum. If we're too busy and we, due to some reason, we cannot complete, like we're very sick or something, like due to which we are not able to complete the rounds, then next day we have to complete the rounds. And then we saw how one of Prabhupada's disciple, he just chanted 15 rounds and was not able to do another one round. And he saw in dream that he realized that Srila Prabhupada came in the dream and was asking him if he has finished 16 rounds. Then he, in the middle of the night he tried to finish the another round. And it is also mentioned that in addition to chanting 16 rounds, we have to also follow the 4 regulative principles, that is, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. And it is beautifully described that how these 4 regulative principles are related to the 4 principles of dharma. That is, like when we kill or eat meat, that time the daya, that principle is broken. So when we don't we take the regulative principle as not to eat meat, then the daya bhava that will be there, which helps us to grow spiritually. Then truthfulness is when we play, like when we do gambling, then that truthfulness is broken. Then cleanliness, that is related to illicit sex, that's external and internal cleaning. If we regulate that cleanliness, that will also develop. And austerity, that is the one with intoxication. So that austerity principle we can maintain if we don't do intoxication. So 4 regulative principles, the 4 pillars of dharma. And in Kali Yuga also, that we read in many scriptures, like there's Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Yuga Dharma is Harinam Sankirtana. The Yuga Dharma for Satya Yuga was meditation. Then for Treta Yuga it was sacrifice, and Dwapar Yuga is deity worship. But for Kali Yuga, through Harinam, because we are not eligible to do all these 3 things, but through Harinam Sankirtan we'll get result of all the 3 things. So that's the Yuga Dharma, what is Mahaprabhu has, Mahaprabhu has instructed us, Harinam Sankirtan. So when we see in Avadha Bhakti, the 9 principles of Bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, we see Shravanam is in the first, but the topmost priority is Kirtanam or chanting. And then why Shravanam comes first? That because while chanting we have to hearing is also important, but the topmost is Kirtanam or chanting. That's why Shravanam and Kirtanam, they are like together. Rest of the things we have to do, they are like they will support to progress in bhakti, but the topmost priority is chanting. Yeah, that's the one. And it is how important it is mentioned that about the like towards the end, that is about sexual desires, like how example of Yamunacharya is given whenever he thinks about the sexual desire and he spit on it, then his lips curl. So yes, these things are like the in Kali Yuga, or in this material world, the most like the very severe diseases, not like we think like cancer and all these things. I think the severe diseases, the material desires. The more and more will get material desires, will get entangled into this material world, and it's very difficult to get away from this repeated cycle of birth and death. So any material desire is coming, we should think this is temporary. Like it was given very beautiful analogy, like you think it's like scratching, and we have seen like whenever you scratch somewhere, then after sometimes again that feeling is there, like we have to scratch more and more. So material desires are like that. So we have to understand how we can limit our material desires. We have to lead a simple life, so we can do like always keep Krishna at the center. And it's also mentioned how 16 rounds is so important, so that we can, it's helpful to remember Krishna always. And that's what my